it may not feel like it, we, as a species, have never in history been as connected to each other as we are right now, by COVID and by climate, by screen and by street. We are inextricably linked together while staying temporarily apart. 2020 is an unprecedented year of change, connection, and disruption. Nowhere more starkly than in the ways in which we care for ourselves and for each other. Today's presenters are harnessing the power of AI to change how we track and attack disease, how we distribute care, and how we create more equitable health outcomes. We are, all of us, in this together. Welcome to Prepare.ai's Health and Wellbeing track.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is the Health and Wellbeing Day of our Prepare AI 2020 conference. I am excited today to introduce our keynote speaker, Chris Sakalosky from Google. He's the Managing Director of Healthcare and Life Sciences of Google Cloud. And he also came from Microsoft. Before that, he was the Vice President of the US Health and Life Sciences Division. He's going to be talking about the role of technology and information in transforming healthcare. Chris?
Thank you very, very much. Let me just get myself into presentation mode here. And thank you for the quick intro and the opening video. I think that the video said an awful lot. So first of all, thank you all for allowing me to join you today. It's a great honor, a privilege to join so many of you across so many industries. Goodness, as the video pointed out, every edge of society has been touched by the changes going on in our society, and probably no more so than what we've seen from a healthcare perspective when it comes to the pandemic and the impact that it's had, and certainly the transformation that the pandemic has driven across the health sector as a whole, whether it be on the provider side and our frontline workers, which we owe such a great debt of gratitude to the insurance companies who are managing their members, the questions they have, the hopes, wishes, and dreams and fears that they have about what this pandemic holds for them. And then the pharmaceutical and life science and med device businesses are racing so hard against the clock to provide therapies and cures and inoculations for this pandemic and things that are coming in the future. So it's exciting to talk to you today from a Google Cloud point of view. For those of you who don't know, Google Cloud is a distinct division inside of the Alphabet Corporation. So my point of view will be shaped through the technology in which we leverage, but I will also talk and share points of view from across the Alphabet properties and share from a technology point of view from there as well. So thanks again for allowing me to spend some time with you. All right, so just advance the slide here. Before we embark, I think, again, I just wanted to reiterate, this is arguably the most challenging time that we've ever seen, at least in modern history. For those of us in my generation, certainly we have not seen anything like this. And the impact of the pandemic has been felt in just every corridor of the health sector, and has even reached the adjacency of the sectors that support and live off of the healthcare sector. And there's been no greater transformative impact than the pandemic. And so if we were having this conversation, I'd say a year ago, we might have been having a conversation about a very, very different set of topics. They would have been there, but they might have been in the background or at the lower ends of the list. The pandemic has certainly reshaped that list, prioritized that list, and has driven some mega trends that I think will be the focus of the discussion today. And there's so many worthy areas to discuss today in our discussion, but again, the pandemic will have shaped much of where I take you this afternoon. So there's a couple things from a megatrend perspective that I'll cover through the conversation today that will lead us into our live dialogue. Number one, the role of the patient and the impact of consumerism on health and on our economy, quite frankly. Second area we'll go to and discuss the evolving role of data in healthcare. And in the past 2 or 3 years, that the role of data has really taken sort of front and center stage, everything from finding information about your health, what's going on with the pandemic, and how researchers are working across vast reams of data to find a cure. And so that's certainly an area we'll discuss today. And then if I could be so bold, I would love to share with you our 3 to 5 year vision of where we think the state of the union of healthcare will be and the role of technology on that. My only ask is, I'm certainly not Nostradamus. And so in 3 to 5 years, if I bump on the industry, please don't give me a scorecard of everything I said it might happen, because I'm sure some of them will evolve with the changes in our economy and society as a whole. So get that disclaimer out there. All right, first and foremost, a couple of things. The role of the consumer.
Chris, let me interrupt you just for a second. Yeah. I'm having a little trouble with my own audio visual here. Are you showing slides right now?
We are.
Okay, I think the screen share needs a retry.
Let me do it. All right. Thanks for the quick interrupt.
No problem.
All right, let's try it again.
It is 2020. It's 2020 after all.
It is. It is. All right. Put myself back into share mode.
Okay, we see a Zoom browser, and there's the slides. And there we go.
How's that? All right. So the slide I have up right now is the agenda I just walked you through. So the good news is you didn't miss much. And with a face made for radio, you got just now you get to see the slides in addition to it. So I'm going to advance ours from here. All right. So as I was mentioning, you know, the first topic is the role of the consumer and the patient in this. And I think one of the biggest areas that we focused on from a Google perspective is we've always played a role in providing health information. Just some quick fast stats. Pre-COVID pandemic, there was over 70,000 health searches by consumers per minute. Just let that wash over you for a minute. 70,000 searches per minute. 1 out of every 20 searches pre-pandemic was for health-related content, whether it be finding a local pharmacy, how to. A lot of folks were turning to the internet, and Google is, you know, one of the many stewards of the internet in terms of providing that information. And I can only imagine what the stats will be when analysts look at it a year from now, Adam, where they're talking to us about the role in which search and information played as a function of our response to the pandemic and how consumers use that data to basically make decisions on the health of their families. And so certainly a high frequency there. And while information is out there, when we thought about it from a health perspective, our role and the role of all of our peers in the industry is to make sure we have trusted and reliable information in the marketplace. And so when we think about our role in industry and the role of all of us in industry, not just the technology industry, but those who touch, whether they're a provider, a consumer, or otherwise, we've taken it upon ourselves to work with trusted advisors, trusted sources of information. And what do I mean by trusted sources? So when Google thinks about putting information on its internet properties, whether it be on the end of its search algorithms or whether it be in its YouTube videos, we're partnering with the likes of the CDC, with Mayo Clinic, HCA, Healthcare Corporation of America, UPenn Health, and so many other trusted sources of solid health information, so that when consumers go to the internet to find information from things like where can I get tested for COVID, what are the symptoms of COVID, where is the best place to go, how can I do a virtual telehealth visit, all of those things, we're working with trusted sources to make sure that information's out there. And it's such a critical thing today. And it will play an important role ongoing with the pandemic when people start asking, when is a vaccination going to be available? Where can I get vaccinated? And should I be vaccinated if I'm in a high risk group? And that could be because I'm a cancer treatment patient, or I'm on some other type of inhibitor to immune suppression. So those are the types of things that we want to make sure, both from a Google perspective, as well as our peers in the industry, that we are partnering with industry thought leaders and those with trusted sources of information that we can publish to bring that to the public. And I think that's going to continue to play a role enduring beyond the pandemic. I think this partnership that you're seeing form with these trusted sources of information, those who are the content outlets of the information and the patient working all in harmony together to find the information they need. And certainly we'll continue to invest in those areas. Now, what we also want to make sure from a consumerism perspective is that ooh, I think it jumped one too many here. There we go, we'll stay right there. Hopefully that's steady, Adam. Let me just say, does it say evolving role of data in healthcare?
Yep.
Okay, one before that. All right, so
maybe is it on auto advance in the?
I think it might be. I just shut that off. That'll save us a bit of gyration. The other side of the impact of consumerism that we are seeing is that of the way consumers want to find their data and how they want to engage with the health continuum. And so we are seeing this large engagement of consumer engagement over voice and video, right? The pandemic, for a short window of time, basically shut down any ability to engage with, other than for the most critically ill, engage with your care provider, whether it be your primary care physician or others. And what we saw quickly to fill that gap, we saw digital first providers sort of rise to the occasion. And they were there. They were always there. They were early models of health engagement. And for some of you who are on certain types of insurance, your insurance provider may have offered you that digital engagement, virtual health visits with your PC, virtual visits with health specialists. And it wasn't just sort of primary care. It might have been mental health visits. We might have seen folks meeting with their nutritionists. And so we're watching this evolution right in front of our eyes, right, to a digital first approach to engaging with the health ecosystem. And again, it wasn't even just with providers. We even saw it across the med device manufacturers who needed to stay engaged with patients that might have been in clinical trials. And the same held true as we had to move down this path of virtual clinical trials, where again, we did not want to bring patients of high risk into a health setting where they may have been exposed to the pandemic. And so we've watched these models emerge, and I do think we'll see these pieces endure beyond the pandemic. I saw an interesting trend stat that over 82% of all health visits today, at this point, I think that was as of August, were telehealth visits, right? This broadening category of digital engagement for health, right? And people were connecting their wearables to those engagements so doctors could get better connectivity and to their vitals through these engagements. And that's up from only 2% 9 months ago, 2%. So I'm often asked the question, do I think it will revert back to the 2%? And quite frankly, I just don't think it will. I think, quite honestly, we've been pushed across a chasm in terms of technology and in terms of consumers building trust in that virtual engagement, and the clinicians, the pharmaceutical companies, caseworkers, care coordinators, and family members. That trust has been built in this digital first model. And I think we'll see a fusing of the digital first and the physical plant of our health systems today, where wearables will play a greater role. And I think one analyst had written, I'm not sure which one it was, but one of the analysts had said, listen, this one's in its 45% to 60% of all visits a year from COVID sort of flattening out will still be virtual care, and they don't think it will come off that low ever again. So that will become the new normal for us. I think that's a very, very telling stat, and one that I personally believe in, and what we're seeing, that healthcare organizations alone and regulators are putting in the right policies to support that ongoing continuum of care, meeting consumers where they are. And really, it's the consumer driving the behavior, and it's us as the technology partners and the health systems that are now catching up to that consumer demand. And again, I think that'll be here to stay. All right, I'm going to shift to our second topic, and we can come back around to the tele-discussion when we get to the open forum for questions. But the evolving role of data. It's interesting, not only does data play a role from a consumerism perspective, meaning people searching for it, but it's really what the clinicians and the researchers, those with MD and PhD, and the insurance companies and the care workers, how they're watching data rise to the occasion through the pandemic. Some of the most obvious, right, are where we see the likes of the researchers having to look over hundreds of years and millions of lines of documentation to figure out how they take what used to be a 4 to 6 year process to bring therapies and drugs to market, and working through that same amount of data in a matter of weeks and months and under years. right? And that's a critical role. So data clearly playing a key role in how we use and search across that data has become more and more critical to us. The other side of that equation is, right, with that high demand and that high premium on data being liquid, and the ability to take both that first party data, that initial patient episodic or longitudinal record, and the ability to reason over that as a clinician, and to combine it with third party data so that we can look at this de-identified massive data based on demographics, where we can ensure that, again, keeping with the clinical trials, where we can look at all populations of health, take specific patient information, look at it at a population level and say, these types of therapies will work with these types of people, and therefore we need to build for all. And it builds that ubiquity back into it, and data is at the core of it. Now, there's a responsibility that comes with this. When you're looking over this much data, we've got to, as an industry, ensure that it's secure and protected at both the individual patient level, at the consumer level, as well as in the population and group levels. And so one thing we've done from a Google perspective is we've launched a technology within our healthcare API that allows organizations to move data in and out of the data silos, but actually allows us to protect that data and the patients themselves to take control over what you can and can't see as a health provider. Now, from a technology perspective, we never look at the data that's being used. We're just providing a platform for the clinicians, the pharmaceutical companies, and your insurance providers to use it. But it gives that granular level of control to both the clinician and to the consumer on that front. And so we view that is a critical area, right? And so when we think about both the value of the data, the protection of the data, that allows us then, once we feel like we're good there, then that really allows us to bring data from all types together and actually start using sophisticated technologies that the cloud really brings to life, right? These broad analysis of data at the population level and at the individual genomic level. And it allows us to pull all of these data sets together, to reason over it, to look at groups of people together, and then at individual therapies, both precision medicine and population health coming together. And that's fueled by both data and the advent, which we'll talk about in just a minute, of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so we're very, very excited about these trends as they emerge. They will continue to emerge in the coming months and years. And I think you'll see cloud technology and high performance computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning play a vital role in taking data and breaking down the silos of where data sits today, bringing it into more usable formats for those on the front line who are treating us each and every day, right? So very, very excited about that. And again, we can talk about that more in the open session. All right, next slide. All right, so I did talk about, and I want to double click on this next area within this, which is the role of artificial intelligence. This question I get so many times, time and time again, which is, Chris, is AI machine learning, is it ready for prime time? Is it still science fiction? When are we going to be ready for mainstream? And I'm very proud and humbled to report that machine learning and artificial intelligence, it's here, and it's in the mainstream, and it's actually on the front lines with supporting our care professionals each and every day in decision support, whether that be clinical decision support or whether it be in operational support. We're seeing it in the most basic tasks where artificial agents are engaging in things like insurance ID number lookups to understand if someone is or is not covered for a specific procedure. Who is my care professional? Who's my primary care professional? Who was in my network? Who's not? Those are very basic functions that we've seen artificial intelligence play a role in. We've seen clinicians and researchers using machine learning to look over large swaths of data, right? This capability of document artificial intelligence, where the machine can look over hundreds of years of data, where a human would take months or years to go over that data. The machine can do it in a matter of minutes or seconds and provide the most relevant information back to those researchers and clinicians who are searching on it. And quite frankly, the consumers are also doing the search on the other side of that. So we're really excited to see that. And we're also seeing some of the more sophisticated things where, for those of you who hadn't seen the article, the Defense Innovation Unit, which is a division of the Department of Defense, they're actually using today, real time, artificial intelligence that's baked and built into sophisticated microscopes. So as they're looking at very specific types of tumors and cell structures, artificial intelligence is actually, as you're looking through the reticle, the artificial intelligence is actually pointing out things on the slide that would otherwise not be there as a researcher or clinician is looking through that microscope and pointing out areas that they might want to further explore, making recommendations as to what they might want to do as a next logical step, and pointing out things that might not be able to be seen by the naked eye. And that's both at a population level as well as at a specific consumer level. And that plays such a critical role when we get into this conversation and topic about precision medicine, right? Your genealogy, your genetics, and the genetics of that specific cancer cell in this example, right? And the impact that a specific drug would have on that cancer cell with your genetic type, stitching that scenario together. Artificial intelligence, machine learning plays such a critical role in each and every phase and step of that, assisting the researcher or the clinician or those who are making recommendations on treatment plays such a critical role in that precision medicine and that personalized care that raises the success rates and most importantly, helps us live a healthier quality of life. And so we're very, very excited about what we're seeing in that regard. And there's so many applications for artificial intelligence on the clinical front, and there's just as many on the operational front. People using artificial intelligence today mainstream to do things like claims adjudication on the insurance side or on claims submission reimbursement rate raising, right? Using artificial intelligence to catch errors in the forms on either side. And then having an artificial agent reach out to either the staff member that was providing the treatment because it was missing a code or to the potential patient on the other end who might need to provide a bit of information that they had not. And that capability is so fantastic for us to see because it takes the burden off of both sides of the equation, right? And ultimately helps us as a society get and stay healthy. And we're also watching it even in the supply chain side of the equation. Thinking about like smart manufacturing, smart supply chains. We're actually working with one of our large pharmaceutical customers where we're using a technology called Vision, a Vision API, where as kits, right, surgical kits come down the assembly line, that Vision intelligence is looking at the kits and it's catching errors. Because as we all, for any of us who are in this business, once you close up and seal a kit, if it shows up with the wrong parts at the other end, it's not that you can send it back and have them reassemble it. It's a throwaway. It's an actual loss on both sides of the equation. And that artificial intelligence allows them to catch that before they seal it, where they can then pull it off the assembly line, put the proper components in, assemble it, send it to those who matter most on the front lines of the patients that they're serving. And there's just so many other applications that we're watching each day come online, become mainstream in this regard. We're just so very excited about those capabilities. All right, so I'm going to shift us into some of the predictions for the future, and then we'll really get into the meat of the discussion, which is your questions and what's top of mind for you. But we really are excited about a couple of things. And I've been leaving very obvious, and I'm sure you've been picking them up, breadcrumbs along the way. First point of view, we are certainly in a digital first world. It's being driven by consumers. The experiences that have wanted in healthcare, we have seen in retail and in banking. And they're holding us as a health industry to the highest standards. So the first thing we see, the digital front door, this virtual care capability across payers, providers, the pharmaceutical companies, and the med device manufacturers, the ability for them to meet the patients where they are, to be more connected with the devices, whether it be a smart watch, a smart shirt, right? Or any other types of sensors that are being dreamed up today, a more virtual, more connected, and more continuous care continuum. And you'll see that play a critical role, right, in this next comment, right? The focus on providers providing a health continuum from birth to death, the ability to understand what's happening longitudinally at a record level, what's going on with that consumer, what's going on with that patient, both that structured and unstructured data, and to even be able to look at it at a population level, right? And to be able to predict, right? To prevent, right? And intervene. Those are three critical topics that we look at every day from a technology perspective. How can we help clinicians, right? Engage, right? Both in the physical hospital and digitally. How do we help them look at the individual patient record, that longitudinal view versus that episodic view of what they're there to see for them just today, right? Where they can engage with them over their lifetime to predict based on who they are, their genetic makeup, or what they may be predisposed to from a condition, and to engage with them across a much broader spectrum. This concept of chronic care, chronic disease, home health will play a critical role in the future going forward. And you're watching vibrant businesses build up around that. You've seen our investments in Amwell. If you've been paying close attention to the press, you've seen several mergers and acquisitions between technology players to bring a more connected experience to you, the providers, to you, the consumers, right? With the promise of the ability to predict, to prevent, and intervene in that health continuum to keep people on healthy lifestyles. And that's not just physical health. Mental health plays just as great a role in all of this, and technology plays just as great a role in clinicians, researchers, and care workers engaging with populations across both their physical and mental health states. And that virtual care capability in bullet one really does allow us to meet them where they are. And it, quite frankly, can become a great equalizer when you think about the population health being universal and providing universal access to care. More people across the globe able to get to care because of the virtual capabilities, right? The ability to reason over that data and provide that back to those broader consumptive bodies. And then the last area, and certainly not least, you're right, the different types of relationships we'll see in the industry, I think will be something that will be enduring. You've seen the mergers and acquisitions, payers and providers coming together to provide health capabilities, not just episodic sick when you're sick, bringing more proactive capabilities together. So mergers and acquisitions and partnerships in that regard. But you're also where you get care from is changing, right? These digital first, digital only care providers, right, will become a fabric of the current traditional brick and mortar health systems today. You'll see those traditional brick and mortar providers providing digital care, and we're going to help accelerate that through technology. But you're also going to see what maybe it's been happening all around us, but we just haven't taken stock of it. The pandemic's put a spotlight on it. But the likes of large retailers, grocery chains, and others getting into the business of health, right? There's interesting stats that point out that Walmart will be one of the largest global health providers in the world. And to think of what that means to expansion to access to care, it's tremendous. But we want to make sure they have the right capabilities, they have the right partnerships with the right health providers in the industry, and technology is such a great enabler. And then you think about the consumers. In order for the consumers to be a part of that continuum, how does technology play a critical role in their lifestyles? Like the applications that will evolve, that are built today or will evolve over the next decade. And so again, if I were to summarize these three, more virtual, seamless, and continuous care enabled by digital and virtual capabilities, a focus on providing wellness care across the continuum through programs that allow us to predict, to prevent, and when necessary, intervene to get someone back on a healthy lifestyle, right? And ultimately, that technology will enable new and emerging models and partnerships today that we're very excited to see across the broad array of care providers, whether they be on the device manufacturing side or whether it's the upstream provider dealing directly with the consumer. But at the end of the day, consumerism will drive a piece of each of these areas. And there's just so many other things we could talk about, but in a 45-minute window, I wanted to make sure I kept it to those three. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about these areas at a very, very high level, and look forward to the ongoing conversations with you either today on the call or in person via video someday soon. So thanks very much.
That's fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. That's going to be a great primer, for the whole day. I think you touched on a lot of great themes, and we have a bunch of breakout sessions that will dig into some more of those at depth, talk about use cases, applications. But yeah, so we have 15 minutes to talk, just have some Q&A and chat. And so a bunch of folks in the audience have submitted questions, and I'm writing them down. So if you have more, please weigh in with them.
Yeah.
So go
Go
ahead.
I was just saying, I would say if we needed to fill some time while folks are writing them in, we absolutely could. But if not, why don't we dive right in?
Excellent. So you talked about the snapback versus permanent change issue. You mentioned some statistics that we went from the low single digits of, number of visits that were virtual, low single digit percentages, up to 86% in August. In that, some analysts are saying we will never go back down to where we were before. We'll be at, anywhere from 40 to 60 and maybe even more percent. So that is super telling. Someone in the audience asked, virtual exams do not have the same fidelity as in-person exams. How do you envision tackling higher rates of misdiagnosis and other types of problems due to the limitations in that virtual environment?
Well, certainly the fidelity, is emerging, right? And so I think the reason why I said the fusion of the physical plant today with the digital is it's the embracing of what can be done today via that virtual engagement. Technology will advance. And what, as I mentioned earlier in a very small snippet, is you're seeing more peripherals being sent home as part of the prescription. You've seen organizations like TytoCare emerge in the background, Dave, where they've had the ability, right, to actually send home devices where they can do, the clinician can actually guide via video a patient to do the self-analytics with the device, which streams back. So I think what you'll see is today the fidelity is not there. You're going to see it quickly get there as more of those peripheral and devices emerge and come home as part of the prescription. That's something we see happening more and more as technology as a prescription is this emerging theme that we watch. But it's never meant to fully supplant. And again, one of the larger pharmaceutical companies we're working with is focused on vision care. The intent is not to replace the comprehensive eye exam. It's to increase the frequency of the engagement with their clinician, especially during a pandemic, which has put a strain on all of our abilities to get in to see someone in person. But as technology emerges, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the delivery of the ability of those peripherals to come home with you will open up and unlock new capabilities. It will never, in my opinion, replace in my lifetime the physical plant. It's just created a fusion of those two, much like we've seen in retail, where the digital properties feed the stores and the stores feed the digital properties. I think you'll see the same relationship emerge here, Dave. That's my take on it. And technology will continue to evolve at a very rapid pace.
That's a great point. You know what it reminds me of is in the 90s and 2000s when people were balking at the idea of paying on the internet, making electronic payments. It's interesting. Yeah, it's a moving target. The fidelity of these telehealth visits. That's a great point. We will have peripherals. There will be things that will augment them.
Yeah, and by the way, we have to accept the reality as an industry. Some consumers and patients may never be able to get to us or not with the frequency that we want. And so it's on us to advance the technology. So to answer the question on the reverse side of it is, it's on us to advance those capabilities so that more and more. I think about a colleague of mine whose daughter is diabetic, and they have to go to the hospital several times a month. Through virtual capabilities and take-home technology, they've eliminated that down to one time every 3 months. Yeah. Just think of the cost of that on the GDP. The fuel cost that you don't have, the fuel costs you don't have to incur, the time away from work, potential lost wages. There's so many things that are steeped up in that just it will fuel that consumer drive will fuel this going forward.
Right. That's good. So a couple of questions came in about HIPAA regulations. I'd like to ask a little bit about that. A simple way to say it is, are HIPAA regulations too strict, or are they not strict enough? I work at a startup, and we're going through our security, getting our ducks in a row, and we got SOC 2 certified, and we're working with financial partners, and we look at the healthcare space, and we're like, oh, geez, now that's a whole ball of wax, like getting through all the approvals and the HIPAA. And so I wonder if those types of things are preventing innovation so much. Is there the possibility of a rewrite or any way to make that just revamped for the modern era?
Well, certainly those laws and rules are there for a reason. They're there to spur the highest quality care and protect the consumers and patients alike. So certainly it's not for me, Dave, to say whether they're ahead, behind, or somewhere in between. And we work with in partnership with payers, providers, the regulators to not only adhere, but to raise the bar where possible on those standards. And I think the pandemic, quite frankly, put all of us under a great degree of pressure to look at the current policies as they sit there today. And this isn't just a comment about the HIPAA regulations, but all of the regulations, GXP and others that sit out there and look at them and say, if we need to bring drugs to market faster, therapies to market faster, if we need to have telehealth visits because we don't want to bring the people at high risk into, or folks that you don't need to be exposed to COVID-19 into the clinical setting, right? It forced us to rethink some of those. And we've seen quickly that public-private partnership to solve those. And so it gives me great hope to see things like the reimbursement rates equalize, right, for televisits and in-person visits. So that really did give me great hope. Also, the same as now doctors can practice across borders, because if you're opening up that video and digital capability, you can bring specialists across borders. And again, that opens up that entire aperture of engagement across, and opens up new business models, quite frankly. And so I think you've seen just those two alone allow for that public-private partnership to adapt and, quite frankly, begin to lead the way for where technology will enable, the rules and regulations will drive that innovation, and yet still keep consumers safe and protected in terms of their data and the quality of the care that's delivered. But I do have great hope for that partnership.
Okay. So Google's bread and butter is search ads. And so natural language processing, internet advertising, putting those things together, finding themes and connecting information. So all sorts of things clearly have spun up around that. Google's Street View, Google Maps, Google, the healthcare stuff. There's all sorts of research that you guys are doing to support that core business. You're releasing all kinds of open source models, which are really benefiting the AI and machine learning community. I work in natural language processing. That's kind of my, wheelhouse. And, Google's model BERT is kind of the, this infamous great contribution to the field. And so kind of roundabout way of saying, there's a lot of stuff going on at Google and you're throwing off all this interesting innovation. What is kind of the core business model with which Google approaches the healthcare space? Do you see yourself as a cloud provider and wanting to just provide services that drive people like, hey, host on Google Cloud so that you're renting our server space? Or are you making and selling products directly to people, building and selling wearables, all of the above? How do you describe that and kind of clarify?
Well, I'll talk about it from a Google Cloud perspective, and then maybe I'll open it up just a little bit wider to all of Alphabet. Again, with 58 plus different operating investments in health, certainly health is at the root of who we are, right? And our ability to help people find information and make it usable, right, is at the core of who we are, right? And so if you apply that concept to health, I think it gives you a sense for where our gravity and gravitas comes from, right? At a Google Cloud perspective, there's a couple aspects you want to think about. First and foremost, we are not in the business of providing advertising, right, around health data, right? When we help our customers, which are payers and providers and the pharmaceutical companies and device manufacturers, our job is as a technology provider first. We are providing them a health-specific platform, right, via our healthcare API, right, to help them ingest data, to help them combine data or de-identify data, whether they're thinking about it at an individual level or they're at a population level, and to reason over that data and drive actionable insights, breaking down those silos of data. We think about that from a technology perspective, but in no way are we in any way, shape, or form using that data to train our artificial intelligence algorithms, our search algorithms, and certainly we're not supporting ads with that data. So that for us is sort of that's a primary mainstay, that data is the data of our customer, whether that be the patient or whether our customer is the insurance provider or the care professional. And we are simply the technology vessel, a sophisticated one at that, but a technology vessel to help them do their best work.
Okay. So there are these different systems, different business lines, separate, distinct. and you keep the data apart. So it's not going into the search algorithms, it's not going into the advertising databases. You've got your health data here. So a lot of people were asking about the security of that data. Some people were asking about blockchain. Is that something that you guys are looking at? Other things are, in the cloud, there's standard encryption methods that keep people's data safe. Is there anything over and above that for a HIPAA container or things that are being used, that are using the healthcare data? Or is that sufficient? Are there other things that you're looking to do to secure and make private that data?
Great question, Dave. First and foremost, we could probably have a 45-minute conversation about data privacy and data protection and really what that means. Certainly, in our industry, with the regulations that are there, our responsibility is to meet and jump over the bar for data privacy and security. Certainly, from a Google perspective, when we look at it, we've built one of the most secure and networks in the world with one of the largest, if not the largest amount of fiber to get you onto our private network. So as that data is in motion and at rest, it's protected. And I'll reiterate that statement. We protect your data, whether it's in motion, in use, or at rest. And that is above the industry standards as we see them today. We could get into the conversations of blockchain. Yes, we use and look at blockchain. We enable blockchain and we partner with some of the industry leaders in blockchain when it comes to data of all types, not just health data. But when we think about it, trust is at the core of the question, Dave. And if you can't trust where the data is, where it's going, and that it's going to be protected once it's there and being used, then this whole fabric falls apart, not just for Google, but for every provider out there. And so that will always be trust through data protection is paramount to all of our successes.
Great. Looks like we're coming up on our time here. So I just have one more question.
Sure.
Someone was asking, what is the background required to get into this area, into data science, data analytics, health informatics? I think that there's probably a shortage of workers tackling this hard and complex and important problem. What would you say people should do to kind of train, gear up, upskill, and get into this field?
Yeah, so two things. There's quite a few shortages that have emerged in the past decade. Clinicians, nurses, and the evolving data scientists. The only difference is there wasn't a lot, and now it's a shrinking population, right? You're seeing artificial intelligence and machine learning try to assist and aid clinicians and caregivers like nurses, right, to alleviate that challenge, right, to take the burden off of them so that we can keep them in the workforce, even well into potentially into their retirement years. And so how do we use those capabilities? On the other side of that, you need people who are sort of like the carbon copy of them, but from a technology perspective, those who are building those capabilities. And we actually provide free training through Coursera and several other avenues for folks to reskill, right? Working with their local small business chambers of commerce and through the corporations they may join. Google and I know peers of ours in the industry provide free training in these areas: artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science and analytics, building machine learning algorithms. There's so many ways in which to get access to that we'd love to follow up with your membership and maybe afterwards send out some links where folks can get more detail on that. But yeah, there's quite a bit out there, and we're excited to bring that to the marketplace because even for us, those skill sets are at a commodity, are far beyond their precious commodity.
Fantastic. Can't thank you enough. Chris Sakalosky, Managing Director, Healthcare and Life Sciences at Google Cloud. We appreciate your time and your intro today. We have a lot of great sessions here. Attendees, please stick around, join into the chats, let us know what you're thinking, ask some questions, and we'll see you at the upcoming sessions.
Pleasure to join in, everyone. Thanks, Dave.